Hello, friends. My name is Brian. My friends call me BG, and this is BG by the Beach. Welcome back. I took a little time off during and around the holidays. Also, still kind of trying to figure out what cadence feels right for making videos and stuff. I still obviously have a full-time job I go to, so by the time the weekend rolls around, I'm pretty tired and just kind of want to take it easy and go to the beach and relax. I do find this to be fun. I'd like to figure out a cadence that works. So today, I wanted to talk about books. As you can see behind me, there's a lot of books back there. I wanted to go through some of my favorite books I read last year. So, first of all, my New Year's resolution every year is just to read 10 to 15 pages in something every day. Generally, if you read 10 pages in something, if you're reading something good, you'll get hooked and read far more than that anyway. If you require more than that, though, it can kind of start to feel like homework. And I just want to get to a point where I've read 10 pages, we're good for the day. And if you have time to go more, you go more. But if you read 10 pages in something every day, you're going to get through a lot of books in a year. In 2025, I hit my 10 to 15 page goal on 358 days, which means I only missed 7. That's a huge win. My total books in 2025, 38 books, 27 physical books and 11 audiobooks. By far my most ever. I'm not a terribly fast reader, but I enjoy it. That was a huge win. Here are a few of my favorite books I read last year. Well, first of all, The Hunger Games. You don't really need me to tell you about The Hunger Games. I somehow escaped both the books and the movies up until now. I was able to get into it right as the 5th book came out, so I read all 5 books right in a row, watched all the movies that are out right in a row, and now I'm waiting on the new movie that comes out, I think this year. So that was a really fun series, and yeah. Next up, we have Piranesi. So Piranesi is, you try to find a non-spoiler way to talk about this book, because you really, anything you know about it kind of spoils it a little bit, but let me just say this. It's about a guy who lives alone in a massive house filled with endless halls and statues and seemingly an ocean somehow. And it's kind of like a labyrinth. He documents his world and believes that house to be the extent of his reality. There are occasional encounters that suggest there may be more to it. And as he investigates the nature of the house, the truth begins to emerge. Let's put it that way. It's kind of one of those books where nothing really happens, but a lot kind of happens. But it doesn't really matter because the writing is good and the vibes are really interesting and weird and fun. So yeah, this was a fun one. You should check it out. Next, we have the Broken Earth trilogy. Let's see if I can get these here. This is the first book, the 5th season. And then we've got the Obelisk Gate and the Stone Sky. First of all, beautiful covers. I just love the way these books look. They look cool on the shelf. Man, I love these books. I first read them in 2016, maybe. And I reread them over the summer last year, and it was almost totally fresh because it had been so long. So it's a sci-fi series set in a world that's kind of plagued by constant seismic catastrophe. Let's put it that way. Certain people can control the energy of the earth and like mold and direct it and create seismic activity, if you will. But because of that, society fears them and those people are oppressed for it, basically. So these books follow a series of interconnected characters as they make it through this world that's in a time of massive upheaval. Hell, the first line on the back of the book is, "This is the way the world ends for the last time. You have my attention." It's just a totally unique story, really interesting characters, and dealing with relatable emotions set in a dystopian world on the brink of and rapidly heading toward total catastrophe. You got to read the series. This is the Broken Earth trilogy. The first book is the 5th season. You got to do it. Next up, Starter Villain. First of all, look at that cover. Once again, you have my attention. This book was an absolute delight. It's just kind of, it's about, just a regular guy whose life takes an unexpected turn when his mysterious uncle dies. He had no real relationship to speak of with the uncle, but after his uncle's death, he inherits control of a secretive, over-the-top villain enterprise, and everything that follows is totally absurd in the best way. The guy gets thrown in with real-life villains and kind of has to work his way through that world while trying to figure out what he wants to do with the unimaginable wealth and power that he suddenly found himself inheriting. Really, really fun. A nice, like, palate cleanser between some heavier books that I read this year. So really good for that purpose. And like I said, just an absolute delight in every way. And like I said, look at that cover. Come on. And without going too much into it, the cover is pertinent to the book. Yeah, and it definitely made me want to dig into some more John Scalzi books. He also wrote the Kaiju Preservation Society, which I read a couple years ago and is also very fun. So on the basis of these two books, I'll definitely be getting more. So next up, we have the Themis Files. First book is Sleeping Giants, and then we have Waking Gods and Only Human. Really cool. This trilogy is another sci-fi series. Yes, I have a type. A little girl falls into a hole at the start of the first book and lands on the hand of a giant robot that has been there for thousands of years. You can imagine what that does to science, religion, global politics, etc. Really interesting, really fun. It's told through interviews and reports and transcripts, kind of in the same way that World War Z is written. So rather than just straight like narrative storytelling, but it follows scientists, soldiers, government officials as they try to understand the origin and purpose of the giant robot that they found and like grapple with the reality of, did we just make first contact with intelligent aliens? Really fun, quick read. Highly recommend. Highly recommend the series, and we'll almost certainly be digging into more books. And finally, Between Two Fires. Probably my favorite book I read last year. Very creepy. Honestly, a lot of the time I was reading this just kind of felt like a fever dream. It's a dark historical fantasy set in a plague-ravaged medieval France. The main character is a former knight who finds a mysterious little girl, and they're on a mission. And on this mission, they encounter demons and angels and kind of get thrown into a war between the two. And honestly, sometimes you're not sure if what you're reading is like real life for the characters or a nightmare fueled by some of the demons they met along the way. Great stuff, wild stuff. I read this during October, and it was like the perfect Halloween season read. But yeah, I mean, the tagline, "An epic tale of medieval horror." Yep, that sounds right. Really creepy. I didn't personally find anything super scary about it, but others I know were relatively disturbed by some of the scenes in this book. Some of the scenes in this book were incredibly disturbing, so I'll give them that. But highly, highly, highly recommend this one. So yeah, this is probably my favorite book I read last year. So that was a list of some of my favorite books from 2025. Like I said, 38 total books, including kind of making my way through the first 9 books of the Wheel of Time series in audiobook form, because that's my brother's favorite series. He's been on me for years to read it. Like I said, I'm not a terribly fast reader, and we're talking about 15 books that are all in the 700 to 1,000 page territory. I just feel like I'd be reading that series for the rest of my life. So with audiobooks, I can put it on 1.65 speed and kind of power through it. I will say the downside to that approach is that like a lot of what happens kind of blends into each other, and I'm not really sure what happens in one book versus another book. So what I've taken to doing is when I get to the end of a book, I'll find like an online summary and just read the summary of the book I just read. So that kind of helps things sink in a little bit. But yeah, it was, I'm really enjoying that series. You can definitely tell it was not necessarily written in current times, the earlier books anyway. I'm in the middle-ish of book 10 right now, which is the last book of what the Wheel of Time fandom affectionately calls the slog, which is, I think, books 6 through 10, where not a tremendous amount happens. I've still enjoyed them, but I can see where that description comes from. So I'm about halfway or so, maybe maybe a third of the way through book 10 right now, and we'll be on to book 11 in a couple of weeks probably. I'm probably going to take it easy on pushing to hit 10 to 15 pages every single day. I have been reading basically every day and will still plan to, but especially by the end of last year, it got a little burdensome because I really didn't want to miss on double-digit days. So I was really happy to only have missed on 7 days. But like I said, I'm still reading every day, and I will plan to continue doing that. I also don't really want to get wrapped up in like the total number of books I'm reading, especially because, as you'll see in a second, some of the books I would like to read this year are monsters. I try not to plan out what I want to read just because who knows, you might not feel like it when you get to the point where it's time to read that book. But here are some books I am loosely planning on reading and excited to read this year. We have Jade City by Fonda Lee, book 1 of the Greenbone Saga. I have absolutely no idea what this book is about. I just know that a lot of people who like similar books to what I like and whose opinion on books I trust all really like it. So we'll see what happens. We have Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, another one that I don't really know anything about, except that it features lesbian necromancers. So you have my attention. I've heard that this one is also kind of like a fever dream and that you largely never really know what's going on at any given time. So that'll be fun. Maybe Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I've never read anything by Brandon Sanderson, but I am excited to do so. Well, I guess my first experience with Brandon Sanderson could be the last 3 books of the Wheel of Time series, which he wrote after Robert Jordan passed away. We'll see about that one. I'm not sure because that's such a massive universe of books, and it's just a lot. It's just a lot. Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, another one that I don't really know anything about except that people whose opinions I trust about books really love it. It won the Pulitzer Prize, so obviously it's recognized as being pretty great. That's another one. The Will of the Many. I guess I'm kind of noticing a theme. I don't really know what this is about either, except that people whose opinions I trust and who all seem to like similar books to me all really like this one. So yeah. And then also I who knows what's going to happen. I would like to dig into the Dungeon Crawler Carl series by Matt Dinniman. I've just heard it's really, really fun. We'll see how that goes. I'm also getting like kind of called to reread A Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones books. I think maybe because the new Game of Thrones show is coming out this weekend. God, it's just... Come on, George. I believe in you. Finish the series. It's hard to get excited about rereading them. I've read those books probably 3 or 4 times now, and it's hard to get excited about continuing to read them when you know book 6. We've been waiting on it for 14 years, and who knows about book 7. I would also like to reread Project Hail Mary, which I read a couple years ago and really loved. And with that movie coming out soon with Ryan Gosling, want to make sure that story is fresh. Loved that book when I read it. Might try the audiobook this time because I've heard that it's a really, really well done production of it. So yeah, that is kind of the story of my 2025. 38 books, most I've ever read. And these right here were some of my favorites last year. What were some of your favorite books that you read last year? What are you excited to read about this year? God knows I love nothing more than adding books to my TBR list. So let me know what you're digging into. Otherwise, thank you for watching if you made it this far, and we will see you next time.